Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 7 of the Min Ed Soda podcast. We are thrilled that we have made it this far. 7 episodes, Todd. We are moving at this point.
Kip, who would have thought? Who would have thought that we'd have made it to lucky number 7? Wow, I'm impressed with us.
Well, and a couple of our early episodes had some, I don't want to say like monster viewership or listenership, but we can track our numbers on YouTube and we can track our numbers on Anchor, but we can't track our numbers necessarily on some of those other platforms like Spotify, Breaker. What are some of the other ones that we have?
We got Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and then we got Spotify. And let's not forget YouTube, because we've had a lot of YouTube viewers as well. And what were those numbers? We had quite a few for a couple of ours.
Our high on YouTube was our pilot episode was 57 viewers, and we've got some subscribers there. But that's how you can help us out. Subscribe, like, follow, and also give us feedback on Twitter. We had somebody use the Min Ed Soda hashtag last week, kind of when we were talking about, actually it was 2 weeks ago, talking about defending our First Amendment rights. And probably didn't engage in the conversation long enough, but it was a good take. And I believe it was a friend and a colleague of yours that had made that response.
Actually a former student of mine. So that was pretty cool and actually for full disclosure, that student goes to law school or will be going to law school. That's the plan. So
sweet.
Shout out to Brad Reuter. So thanks, Brad.
Well, and today we're taking another monster step in our podcast. Every episode tonight, up until this one, has been a one-take podcast. Today's episode, we are splicing and dicing and putting some things together. So we will see how this goes.
Yeah. And it was really neat because this is a neat thing about podcasting is because of our week, our schedules just didn't line up. Kip's schedule and my schedule didn't line up. And then our guest, she had to cancel on us at the last second. So what we did was our guest and we connected at a different time. We recorded her piece, and now Kip and I are getting together to put the rest of the finishing touches on this episode. So it's pretty cool that we're able to do this, and thank you, Kip, for your splicing and dicing abilities. So hopefully your splicing and dicing abilities that leads into help in the kitchen for your wife and your family as well.
I was actually about to make the transition to golf. I was like, slicing and dicing might be okay because I know I slice and chunk all the time, and that's why I'm the duffer on this podcast.
Yeah. I just got invited to go golfing like tomorrow. Nicest day of the year, 80 some degrees. My friend Billy Woolsey, he texted me and said, "Hey, want to hit the links with us?" And I'm like, "Nicest day of the spring." And guess where this guy's going to be?
Working on your house.
No, sitting at a JO volleyball tournament.
Hey, supporting kids.
I know, but we can't even go in and watch. So I'll be sitting in my truck, probably drinking coffee and working on my laptop, which does not sound too exciting, but it'd be a good time for me to get some work done.
Well, I know that when you did your recording with Christy, you did give a little introduction to her, but maybe you want to just give a quick introduction of the interview we're about to listen to, and then we will transition right into that interview.
Yeah, that sounds good. Kristie Sullivan, she is a school advocate with the Western Lakes Regional Center of Excellence. And Kristie is a former English language arts teacher, and she has been really involved in the ELA standards development for the new set of standards. So she actually chaired the committee that came up with the new standards. So super fortunate to be able to pick her brain a little bit about ELA standards and how that process goes. It's not just people sit down and bang, they have these standards developed. There's a pretty lengthy process that Kristie and that group went through to develop those new standards. So really neat conversation. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I got a chance to pre-listen. I'm excited to have Kristie share her expertise around those English language art standards and also the rapid fire questions at the end. So we'll go ahead and we'll transition to Kristie here.
Let's do that. Thanks, Kip. Hello, everyone. This is Todd Vanner from Mid Ed Soda Podcast, and with me today, I am so honored and excited to have my Western Lakes Regional Center of Excellence teammate, Kristie Sullivan, with me. And today we're going to be talking about the new ELA standards and what that means for schools. And Kristie is a school advocate on our Western Lakes team. So welcome, Kristie. Thank you so much for joining me today. And why don't you give yourself a little bit more of a broad intro than what I just did.
Sure. Thanks, Todd. And thanks for having me today. As Todd said, my name's Kristie Sullivan. I've been in education for the last 15 or so years. I started out teaching English language arts at the secondary level. I also added licensure to become CTE certified and taught some business ed courses, technology, graphic design. I'm passionate about both literacy and technology, and just really care about making positive outcomes and opening up opportunities for as many kids as possible.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kristie. Kristie is one of the people on our Western Lakes team. We have so many bright minds, and Kristie, you totally fall into that category. So, and you know, as Kristie just shared some news with us recently that she's going to be moving on. She's taken a position as a curriculum director and assistant principal at the Fergus Falls School District. So we're going to miss Kristie. I know personally I've gotten to work with Kristie with a few of our identified schools, and I absolutely love working with her. So I'm going to miss you, Kristie. So you know, there might be some plans that we'll be connecting with you over the course of time. So it's not really a goodbye. It's just our work is going to look a little different, right?
Yep, I'll just be down the street.
Yeah, yeah, and like literally just down the street. Our Lakes Country Service Co-op office is just down the street from Fergus Falls High School. So, Kristie, you know, I wanted you to have this conversation with me today because you were super involved in the new ELA standards process. Like, you were on the statewide committee that helped to develop the new ELA standards. So tell us a little bit about that process. You know, kind of walk us through, give us a 10,000-foot view of how that process worked.
Okay, so the Department of Education opened up the opportunity for, you know, calling for reviewers who from around the state would be interested in serving on the 2020 ELA Standards Review and Revision Committee. And they accepted applicants for, you know, I don't know, a certain number of weeks. And they really tried to assemble a committee that will be really well-rounded, representing from early childhood all the way through higher ed, community partners, American Indian liaisons and directors, and just really making sure that we are representing the demographics of the entire state. Once they go through and decide who they're going to accept, I guess, into that committee, we began meeting in July, late July of 2019. We met together as a full committee at the Department of Education and really started forming our work. We started with career and college readiness, and what does that mean? And in 2020, what does that mean for our students, and how has the expectation or how have the demands of society changed since the 2010 standards were drafted? So we had 34 committee members, and after we really started digging into our work, then they also opened up kind of informal applications for co-chair positions. And so within the committee, 4 of us kind of stepped forward and helped to facilitate more of the smaller working groups. And so I was honored to serve as a co-chair and, you know, dig in a little bit more, help coordinate the work.
So basically what I hear you saying is like, you're a super big deal in this process.
No, I was just a helper. Look to the helpers, right? Yeah, so of course the pandemic disrupted our work, and while we were meeting regularly, we had several Zoom meetings between our regular committee meetings where we were continuing the work, like I said, these smaller working committees. And then COVID happened and we never really got to finish up our work together on site. So it kind of felt like, you know, how everything else felt when we were experiencing the shutdowns.
Mm-hmm.
But we continued our collaboration via Zoom and got the job done.
Yeah. So through all this work, you know, being a former English language arts teacher and going through this process, you have a really good handle on the differences and similarities between the previous set of standards and the ones that will be coming out soon here. So are there similarities between the new and old ELA standards?
Absolutely. The main skills, the outcomes we want for our kids are still, you know, all of those from the 2010 Common Core standards. While they might not be coded the same and they might not be structured the same, they're all still there. There are differences mainly in structure, but the committee was really intentional about how to organize these skills, and we really believed in the reciprocity between the different strands, so that reading isn't taught in isolation, language skills and grammar are not taught in isolation, etc. But yeah, I mean, the skills, the college and career readiness, they're all still there. It's the same content with some additions. The committee was also really passionate about reflecting the changing demographics in Minnesota as well. And so there is emphasis on student choice, on kind of the windows and doors, thoughts behind student self-selection of texts, really broadening perspectives and affirming student identities.
So what I hear you saying is that there is a lot of, so there's a lot of similarities there. So if you are an English language arts teacher, are you going to see a big change in what you're teaching and how you're teaching it? Or is it going to be pretty similar with some tweaks that you may have to add or delete?
I think it's very similar. Really, like I said, those culturally sustaining, culturally affirming pieces were not really in the language of our 2010 ELA standards, accepting the contributions of Minnesota American Indian tribes, which we as a state are required by statute to include specific language around Minnesota American Indian tribes, and rightfully so. The other slight difference there is again in the structure. By structuring these standards a bit differently, our committee was sharing our philosophies, I guess, on how instruction should happen. And again, like I said, reading instruction doesn't happen in a silo from writing. The strands are organized in a way that each one of them, there are embedded standards for foundational skills, embedded standards for media literacy, because media literacy now in it's 2021 now, but media literacy is no longer a separate entity of itself. It's incorporated, it lives within everything we do. And we need to be preparing students for those changing demands in society, so that they can safely and effectively use the tools that are available to them.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of just answered the next question that I had on the tip of my brain, Kristie, was what are some specific skills that students will need to be able to perform or have knowledge of? And it sounds like that media literacy piece is a big piece of that, along with the other skills around reading and writing. So is there anything else that you think should be highlighted or is highlighted, I should say, in the new standards?
Yeah, I think there's a little, there's some attention paid to students practicing their metacognition, thinking about how they learn, thinking about how they think, thinking about the language they use in different settings. So that was maybe an addition here. And there's really a lot of emphasis on learning through writing. Language and grammar will no longer have a strand of their own. They are embedded within each of the other strands throughout reading, writing, viewing, speaking, and exchanging ideas. And along with that exchanging ideas, there's an emphasis not only on communicating, like public speaking, but also in engaging and interacting with different audiences. So really, how do we even walk through a norming process for how we communicate with one another in a classroom setting? These are all additions from the 2010 standards, or they go a little bit deeper in that way.
Yeah, and I would say, especially in our society now, that to me sounds like a really important skill, being able to engage and interact with others in an effective manner and not just, shouting over one another. So,
right.
So,
and
so
even,
maybe,
respectfully disagreeing at times. Yeah. Our students need instruction. They need modeling from their teachers and the adults in their lives around these communication skills.
Yeah, definitely. What would you recommend that schools do right now to start preparing for the new ELA standards?
So the first thing I would recommend is really to do a side-by-side comparison, looking at the old or the former 2010 Common Core Minnesota standards, and then taking a look at the new standards document. And it's difficult to do a very straightforward crosswalk between these documents because the strands are structured differently, and they were structured differently purposefully to embed those skills throughout each strand. But I would look at the two documents and see what you notice that's different, see what you notice that's similar, reflect on what that brings up for you based on your experiences as an educator. Some educators, they've been through several sets of standards and they're really familiar with the process of going through and, reflecting on, where do I teach this? To what depth? How do I assess this? Is this a guaranteed standard in my classroom or in our district? That will need to be repeated, but that needs to be revisited pretty fluidly throughout, throughout the 10 years of this document even, because our students change, our society changes, our resources might change. And so I would start there. And then with the 2020 standards, as most schools and districts have done with standards previous to this, having a conversation about, which of these standards is really a priority. Not that we won't teach all of them, because of course we're required to teach all of the standards. Which of these will we guarantee students will master in our system, in each grade level, and by the time they graduate, so that they truly are career, college, and life ready. And in doing that, I would have them look at each standard, each benchmark, and have a conversation around what is this, how enduring is this standard or benchmark? Is it high leverage? Does it connect to other content areas and other areas student, are they ready for this? What is the readiness involved in preparing students to master this standard or benchmark? And then, of course, teacher judgment. What do teachers think are the most important, the most enduring, the most high leverage standard benchmarks in the document? And of course, how will we assess this of student mastery for those guaranteed standards?
That sounds like a lot right there, Kristie.
It does, and this is, you know, it's a heavy lift. Every time that there are new standards released, it's really a heavy lift, but it's really great work, and it brings teachers together. And when you can establish clarity around what a standard means and what proficiency of a standard looks like, you know, we're all better when we're all better. I think that's the quote someone shared with us early this week, right? It was
That's right.
Senator Wellstone.
Yeah,
We all do better when we all do better.
That's right. Well, thank you, Kristie. I appreciate you sharing your insights on the ELA standards, because I know for some teachers this is a really daunting task. So hopefully this provides a little bit of support for teachers as they start working their way through the process. When will the new ELA standards be tested on the MCA? On the MCA, was it now 4 or 5 test?
So it was going to be in the 2024-2025 school year. However, recently, about a month ago, the MDE announced that both the science and the ELA standards full implementation year would be pushed back 1 year. So now the MCA will reflect the 2020 standards in the 2025-2026 school year.
Which
so it gives schools some time, right?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that it seems like, oh, well, that's way down the road, but actually to do those steps of implementing things, you know, starting to look at your standards, doing those crosswalks and things like that, it all takes time. And
Absolutely.
And then starting to implement those standards in certain grade levels so that it's not like one big shock to the system. We work ourselves into those changes. So yeah, so I've been working with Courtney Henderson, our colleague. She and I have been working on the science standards. Courtney's been doing more work than I have on it, but you know, there's a timeline laid out for those as well. So in one of these upcoming episodes, we may have Courtney on here so that she can talk a little bit about the science standards. So so thanks, Kristie. But before you go, you have to go through the 10 rapid fire questions. Okay, so don't think too much about these. I know you're a very analytical person and you really like to think things through, but I want you to just kind of let your guard down right now. And I'm going to shoot 10 questions your way. Okay.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Your first question is, if you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
Oprah Winfrey, because she can do so much good with so little time because of all the resources at her disposal.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. If you could talk in your sleep, what would you say? If you could talk in your sleep, what would you say?
5 more minutes.
That's what I wanted to say this morning.
Snoozing.
What is the first thing you do when you get up in the morning?
I make coffee.
Okay. What is your favorite movie quote?
Ooh. Oof, this is a hard one. Movie quote. Ooh.
You might have to go way back to like the 1990s, maybe, huh? And maybe not even your favorite, maybe just one that comes to mind.
Well, I'm thinking of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. I use
Oh.
that quote sometimes when I'm thinking about things that I can create for other educators and students with like book club and things like that.
Awesome. What is your favorite joke?
Oh my gosh.
It's got to be clean because this is a family podcast, kind of.
I really don't have one, but I'll tell you the one that comes to mind.
Okay.
It's super cheesy and not funny, but
It's
the
all the
only one I
better.
can think of.
It's all the better. We had Eric Skansen on a few weeks ago. He's the principal at Cold Spring Elementary. That's his calling card, are cheesy dad jokes. So
Okay, well, these are like jokes my son tells me. So what's a pirate's favorite letter?
Oh.
Arr.
That's good. What would you do on Mars for fun?
Well, I would see if I could get something to grow. I love gardening and, you know, probably not going to happen. But I suppose if I had enough time there and enough resources, that's what I would try.
I bet you could make it happen. You and another one of our colleagues, Maria, you two could make it happen. And Courtney too. She's a gardener.
That'd be my aim.
Yeah. If you could get yourself anything, what would you get?
I would get, I'd probably get a hot tub for my family.
Nice.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, that would be nice. Where is the worst place you could get stuck?
Ugh, Walmart in December. I mean, no offense to Walmart. I do my shopping there. I get groceries there, but I don't want to be there in November or December at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like being stuck at Menards on Black Friday, and they've got all the deals going. It's like I made the mistake one time of going to pick up materials for a little do-it-yourself project. That was a bad decision. So. What would you do with your 15 minutes of fame?
Well, I would just advocate for kids. That's what I do, advocate for kids.
I could see you doing that. Here's your last question, Kristie. Where would you go if you were invisible?
Well, I'd probably travel the world, go to Europe, go to wherever, because of all the travel restrictions. If I was invisible, I would hop on any flight I could.
Sounds like a good plan to me. All right. Well, hopefully those 10 rapid fire questions weren't too painful for you. I know that I know you like to be planned out and all that kind of stuff. So it's good for you to have to be a little flexible, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Kristie, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us today. And hopefully we will see you again soon. And I know that even after your time is done here with the RCEs, I'll still get to see you at Fergus Falls High School. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
You bet.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, Todd, thank you for that very in-depth interview with Kristie. We were able to learn a lot about the process being used to get the new ELA standards in place, and then also a little bit of background into what that means for us as educators going forward. So any big takeaways for you in terms of your time with Kristie?
I think it was kind of towards the end of what she was talking about, what can schools do right now? Start engaging and interacting, or having students engage and interact with others. It's really comes down to each school doing that side-by-side comparison. You know, the schools have to do this themselves. You can't send out a canned approach to each school and have them engage in these activities of comparing the old standards to the new standards. So that's what really stuck out to me is having schools really engage in that work and coming up with their own plan as to how they're going to address the standards.
Yeah. And what stuck out to me was actually a little bit more towards the beginning, maybe towards the middle of the interview, where she started talking about not teaching our reading and our grammar and writing in isolation, that the skills that are in those standards and proficiencies that are in those standards can be applied across curriculums. And as a former elementary principal, that just really struck a chord with me. And not so much in terms of the English language arts standards, but how often we make our classes at the elementary level be standalones, like social studies. Just think of all the different English language arts and media standards that could be taught and demonstrated and assessed in like social studies, and also in math and science when we get into some of those writing activities and explaining your thinking. That just not thinking of all these things in silos, but start thinking about how can I incorporate them all into it. It's a time saver within the day. It makes it more meaningful and engaging for the students. They get to understand the why. And so why she didn't go to that much in depth on it, just her comment around not teaching reading, writing, and grammar in isolation just was like music to my ears.
Yeah, and I would say that goes along with the secondary setting as well. I used to be a science teacher, and just thinking about technical writing. When you are writing lab reports, there is a lot of technical writing that students can do, and how can be planful in addressing some of those standards that might be ELA standards in other courses. So a lot of opportunities there, I think.
Well, thank you so much for arranging that time with Kristie. I know having her right there in your regional center is a benefit to the schools up in the Western Lakes region. And I know that, that they are getting a great benefit from Kristie, at least in the remaining time she has left before she moves on to her new job.
I know we are going to miss her immensely, but just like you, I was super fortunate to work with such bright and talented, knowledgeable people in the RCEs. And I think the RCEs are some of the best kept secrets in the state. So if you are a school leader or a teacher, or you want to learn more about the regional centers of excellence, don't hesitate to reach out to either me or to Kip and learn more about what we can do. And
the easiest way to find us is through Twitter. Todd is at Principal Learner. That's at PRINCPLLEARNER. He does know he doesn't know how to spell principal.
Well, when I first made my Twitter handle, there was too many letters, so I had to carve off a couple, and that's what I did.
And I am straight and easy. If you remember how to spell my name, I'm at Kip Link. That's KIPLYNK. Or use the hashtag MinEdSota, MINNEDSOTA. And you also really help us out by liking and subscribing on whichever platform you are listening or viewing us on. And there's also ways in some of those platforms that you can make connections with us as well.
Yeah, please do that. That helps us out, especially so that we can better understand the reach that we're having through people that are listening to our podcast.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we will be back with another episode next week. Have a great week.
Take care, everyone.